Hello YouTube! This is for a 1996 4Runner Limited with the locking rear differential. Naturally, I'm having problems with my four-wheel drive. The four-wheel drive light is not coming on, and I was trying to figure out why. And I could not find a diagram that showed all the sequences of what should happen to get four-wheel drive in this vehicle. So I came up with one, and I'm going to share it with you. Okay, that's the reason for this video. Okay, so number one, this is with the vehicle on, and we're going to go high 4. Okay, to do all this. Okay, so number one, when you want four-wheel drive, you're going to push the button inside the car. Okay, when you push that button, it sends a signal to the four-wheel drive control ECU. The ECU says, okay, the driver wants four-wheel drive. What it does then is it sends power to the transfer case actuator motor. Okay, and I got it as number 2. I had to draw it in. It wasn't on this diagram. So it sends power to the transfer case actuator motor. The motor moves the transfer case in the four-wheel drive mode. Okay, or it moves it out. It depends on which way you want to go. All right, but right now we push the button. We want it to go four-wheel drive, so it's going to move it into the four-wheel drive mode. When it does that, there's a what they call four-wheel drive switch that's located on the transfer case actuator motor module or part, and I call it a sensor, but anyway, it's located on there. Okay, now that sensor will sense there's a rod that moves with inside the motor moves a rod. Anyway, it senses that rod. When that is in the correct position, it sends a signal back to the ECU. The ECU now selects, because this one is not the electronic model, this one has solenoids. It selects which solenoid from the ECU, picks whichever solenoid is the correct one, the vacuum to operate the vacuum lines. Okay, so it switches the correct solenoid. The solenoid sends the vacuum to the front axle actuator and locks up the axle. Okay, so once that's done, there's also another sensor switch up front, which they call the ADD switch. When the axle is moved into the lock position, the switch is triggered. The switch then tells the ECU, okay, the front axle is locked. Now, so all these things are in order. Once that all is correct, the ECU then says, okay, it turns on the four-wheel drive indicator light on your dash. And there you have it. That is the sequence of operation that I've run into on the 96 4Runner Limited. Okay? Now, that is pretty much the end of this video. If you want to see a more in-depth video of how this was all arrived at, including electrical diagrams and all the boring stuff, please continue watching. Okay, let's talk about the sequence of operation of the ADD control system with the electrical diagrams. Okay, so number one, that's our first thing we're going to do is press the button on our four-wheel drive switch. Okay, so here we are. So what we do is we press the button, and I've got it drawn in. Number one, we press the button, and that sends a signal to the ECU that we want four-wheel drive. The driver wants four-wheel drive. Okay. Well, once the ECU senses that, what it does is it says, okay, the driver wants four-wheel drive. Power is sent through the ECU to terminal 13. Terminal 13 connects to terminal 7, which happens to be the motor, the transfer case motor. The motor activates and moves the transfer case to the four-wheel drive position. Now it does that for, it only takes about 5 seconds, so it cuts it off. Okay, and that completes that part of the operation, right? Hit the button, transfer case actuator moves, and that's fine. So now we're going to move on to step 3 of this diagram and see what happens there. Okay. All right, so we're talking about sensor switch number 3, which tells us that the transfer case has transferred to four-wheel drive. All right, that's this switch right here. So it sends a signal to the ECU. The ECU says, okay, the transfer case is in four-wheel drive. It's shifted. When it does that, the ECU now sends power out to the ADD actuator. Okay, it selects the correct the mode. Okay, this diagram shows an electric ADD actuator. I don't have an electric one. I have solenoids. Okay, so basically I track this down. The wires do match. The colors don't match, but they go to the same place. Okay, so what mine does is it just picks the correct set of wires to send the power down. Okay, to select the correct solenoid. Once the solenoid, from the solenoid, it goes by vacuum lines, right? We talked about that. So let's say it picks the correct solenoid for locking. The vacuum line sends the vacuum to the front axle actuator. The axle actuator moves and locks the front axle. The ADD sensor switch, they call it, detects that, okay, and it sends a signal back to the ECU. Okay, now, I'm not sure if this is the correct switch, but that seems to be the right one. Number 6. It sends the signal back to the ECU. Okay, now the ECU in turn says, well, okay, all these conditions before are satisfied and they're good. Now, it sends out of terminal 21 a signal over to the four-wheel drive light. So basically, it turns on the four-wheel drive light. And that would be our light number 7. Okay? And that's basically the sequence of operation of how things should normally work. Okay? Let's troubleshoot the ADD control system. All right? The sequence of operation I think already laid out in the beginning of the video. But if you really want to get into this and figure it out, let's divide the system, divide and conquer, I guess is what we're going to call it. All right? So what we're going to do is... Number 1, go to your solenoids up front. Now this is for 96 4Runner Limited that has the solenoids, not the electrically connected actuator. We have the solenoids, okay, vacuum solenoids. Of course, you're going to do all the vacuum checks and everything. That's all in other people's videos. I'm not going to talk about that, okay? But you go to the solenoids, okay, and you find out which one has vacuum on the output side, okay? And then hit your, have someone, or you or somebody else can go inside the car and turn on the 4x4 switch and see if it switches at the solenoid. It should switch from one solenoid to the other. Okay, when you're in four wheel, it's going to be in, the air is going to be sucked in, the vacuum is going to be on one solenoid, and if you're in free wheel, it'll be on the other solenoid. Very simple. Okay, so let's say, and this is what happened to me. I go in a car, I hit the button, and the solenoids do nothing. Just nothing. Only one, the one solenoid that had vacuum on it is still the same one. Okay? So what do you then? Okay, so everything up front is not, it doesn't matter. So there's something is happening between the solenoid and the switch. That breaks it down. Now we got something to work with. So since that happened, and I said, okay, well, let's make sure that the vehicle is switching into four-wheel drive, the transfer case. So you got to get somebody under the car because you're going to need 2 people to do this, okay? Have the vehicle on, okay? You put it in park and chalk the wheels so you don't kill your friend or yourself. Get underneath the car, have somebody push the button, and listen to the actuator motor and see if it moves. If it doesn't move, then you're not getting power to the actuator motor, and that's a whole different issue. All right, basically that's what I've got, and I'm thinking it's my ECU. But anyway, but let's say you hit the button and you got power to the actuator motor. All right, so the motor moves. You hear it, it stops. It takes about 3 to 5 seconds. Okay. Once that happens, there's a switch on the side of the actuator motor. That switch monitors a rod that goes back and forth, and the rod hits the sensor switch and sends a signal back to the computer saying, hey, the car has switched into four-wheel drive. So if you got the switch and the motor and and it moved and it still didn't switch the actuator, most likely you got a bad switch. So take the switch out, check it, and then put it and see what's going on there. okay? Because if those conditions are met, the actuator moved to four-wheel drive, the sensor switch should have picked it up, told the computer will say, hey, it moved, I need to switch the vacuum lines, okay? Then again, if you had a bad ECU, that's not going to happen, right? So there's another thing to look at. You may have a bad ECU. Okay, what happened to me was I pushed the button, the actuator motor did not move, okay? And I was able to manually bypass the sensor switch by shorting it out. The car said, "Hey, great! The car's in four-wheel drive." It switched the vacuum lines, switched locked the front axle, and this switch kicked in, the front sensor's ADD switch, and the light came on. I was like, "Wow, great! You know, I tricked it, but it works." So the switch, well, you know, I was pressing the switch by my hand because I took it out and I was just pressing it. Okay, so that's one way. But then, of course, the motor's not working. Okay, now we got a problem with the motor. So there's the drive line. Okay. So when I hit this switch, you see the drive line is free, right? All right. But when I hit this switch, it locks in turns on the vacuum and everything, and there it is. It's locked. It won't go. All right. I hope that shows up on film. All right. Okay. On to the problem with the motor, and you could jump the motor. Okay, or bypass the motor. It's a little dangerous, so do this at your own risk. Okay, so I'm going to bring over a motor wiring diagram. We're getting really into this now. Okay, I told you it's going to be a long, boring video. Okay, now this is the connector that's on the motor itself on the car. So you unplug the wire and you're looking at this thing right here. Basically, these are pins sticking out, and the pins you're interested in are pin 2 and pin 3, which is these two guys right here. Okay, now it's actually turned around kind of like this, facing up in the car. Okay, now you don't want to blow anything up, so what I did was I went and got some alligator clips and put it on terminal 2 and terminal 3. Now you can't see what you're doing, but make sure you get an ohm meter, and the ohm meter has to read down low, not high, very low readings, like 100 ohms. So if you get your alligator clips, you could clip one of your test leads to your ohm meter leads to one side and one to the other side. You should get between 0.3 and 100 ohms. I was getting about 8 or 9 ohms, okay? Why is that important? If I'm getting 8 or 9 ohms, that means, hey, the windings are good in the motor, okay? I could put 12 volts on it and it's going to work. Now, if I'm getting a short, I'm not going to do that, because if you hook up your battery, it's going to blow up, all right? So that's what I did. So, and you'll see, and I have a clip of the video of how this is done. All right, figuring out why my car, my four-wheel drive light won't come on when I hit my button on my 96 4Runner. Okay, so I went and got these alligator clips with the little wires on them from Harbor Freight, and I downloaded this. I was reading through the internet and I found this. What do they call it? It was a training manual, I believe. Anyway, it shows the connector and what terminals you're supposed to check. Now they show a whole complicated relay system and everything. Forget all that. What I figured out was terminals 2 and 3 are the ones you want, and depending on which way you wire it, it's going to switch it to 4-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive. Okay, so right now, and it also tells me there's a number here to check. Inspect the actuator resistance. So I got my handy dandy ohm meter, and mine goes pretty low. So it says the ohm should be 0.3 and 100 ohms. So I got a scale all the way down here. So I already got those hooked up in there. I just clipped. There's a pin inside sticking out, which you can't see, and I can't get the camera in there. And I just kind of went on the end like that. Okay, I just kind of went on the one there and one for the other one. Okay. So right now I'm just going to put these on and measure the resistance. Okay. Basically, okay. So the resistance here is coming up on. Looks like it's 12.2 ohms. Okay, 12.2. So it says if it's between 0.3 and 100 ohms, you're fine. Basically, what you're doing is you're reading the windings in the motor. Okay, you're making sure the motor isn't burned out. If it's 0 or infinite, that means the winding is burned out, and there's nothing going on in there, and then the motor's not going to work. And if it's shorted out, then there's something really bad going on in there. Okay, and you don't want to put power on it if it's shorted. Okay, yeah, and okay, so right now I need 12 volts to move the thing. Okay, so I've got the one of these jumper packs. That's where I'm getting my 12 volts from. Okay, you got to be careful when you're doing this. Okay, so you know what? Let's look inside the car first. We'll do this live. All right, where's my key at? If I'm key first. All right, so let's get the camera up there. Okay, so what we're gonna do is turn on the key, and you see we got nothing. Okay, and the button here is pushed in. I'll push it a couple times. All right, the button's pushed in, and we got nothing. All right. Okay, let me turn that off. Okay, now let's get back down under the car. Sorry about that. Okay, now let's see. I think you can see what's going on there. All right. Okay, I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear this, but all right. So I'm gonna take the positive terminal, and from my licks, oh, the heater just went off. Good. All right. So according to this, if I got 3 positive and 2 negative, terminal 3 positive, terminal 2 negative, I'm gonna get 4-wheel drive, and I don't have 4-wheel drive right now. All right. So I'm gonna hook that one up to the positive, and I got the negative right here. I'm just gonna briefly touch it. Okay. If it arcs or anything, I'm gonna let it go. But listen to this. Okay, did you hear the motor do all that? Okay, so it switched over to, let me take out the battery, the power. Okay, so I'm assuming that right there now has shifted the transfer case into 4-wheel. I mean, yeah, well, 4-wheel, that means the rear axle, not axle, drive line and the front drive line now are both locked in to the transfer case, and they're both going to turn. All right, so let's go up there and check. All right, so now we're back in the car. Let's put the key in. I notice the motor ain't on. Okay, so when I turn that on, see the 4-wheel drive light actually comes on. So we are now that tells us that the transfer case has transferred over. Okay. There's one more thing we got to go over on the bottom of the car. Okay, so let's get back underneath the car. Now, when you hear that motor switch over like that, you know that it's in, the transfer case is set to 4-wheel drive. Let's just say that. It's set to 4-wheel. The output is on both drive shafts. Okay? Now, when I started chasing this problem, there's a sensor that's located up here. Okay, this harness has another sensor up here. There's another connector. And I thought that sensor was bad. That sensor senses the rod that goes back and forth. And when it moves forward, or whatever way it moves, it pushes up on a switch. Okay, let me see if I have that switch. Visuals are always better. It pushes on a switch like this, okay? So this thing is screwed in there like this, and then as the rod moves by, it pushes up. And when it pushes up, it shorts out the 2 wires. That's all it is. It's just a short. It's an open and a short. So it shorts out the 2 wires, and it lets the computer know, hey, this unit has moved into the 4-wheel drive configuration. That is, both drive shafts are spinning, okay? If your sensor's out, then the computer's not going to get that signal. But here's the thing. If you move this motor, your car is in 4-wheel drive permanently, okay, until you decide to take it out, which could be a good thing. If you're in a bad situation, you might want to have 4-wheel, because the idea is you want 4-wheel, okay? If you want 2-wheel, just leave it alone. Okay, so anyway, so what I did was I bought a new sensor. This one's brand new. I thought that was the problem. I put it in. It didn't fix the problem. So I'm like, what's going on? Okay, now there's another story to that. a lot of people say in the beginning, oh, check the vacuum hoses up front and see which one does what, right? I go, oh, okay, because it's not locking the front axle. Okay, so I chased the problem all the way back to here electrically, and what I did was when I unplugged this connector up here, I shorted this connector out. Okay, this connector, I took a piece of wire and I shorted it out between the two terminals. Guess what? My four-wheel drive light came on the dash, and the vacuum line switched up front, the solenoid, because the solenoids weren't switching. But by shorting that out, the computer got the signal that, hey, this transfer case switched. That means I can go ahead and engage the front axle, okay? But if you think about it, in reality, this transfer case, I tricked it, but this transfer case never changed. You're still in two-wheel drive. The front axle engaged, so it's spinning, but it's not connected. So basically, you're adding drag. It didn't do anything. The dash lights, everything looked good, but you're still in two-wheel drive. And when I came back here, I was like, why did it all came about? Because I got this switch, put it in, figuring, okay, that's the problem. Then I go, wait a minute. I put this new switch in, everything should be fine. Why is it when I push the switch manually, I can get the front to lock and unlock, okay? And I got a whole video on that with the drive shaft. Now there's the drive line, okay. So when I hit this switch, you see the drive line is free, right? All right, but when I hit this switch, it locks in turns on the vacuum and everything, and there it is, it's locked, it won't go. All right, I hope that shows up on film. All right. So then I said, okay, there's got to be something wrong with this actuator. Of course, you know, being humans, I always think, oh, the worst thing, the whole thing is blown up. And I had to sit around and think about it. And I said, you know what? There's probably nothing wrong with this unit. It's got to be something else. Okay. Now I go, you know what? Let me go do some reading and trace the wiring diagrams. And there's a lot of guys on YouTube that posted a lot of stuff and a lot of other forums. And so got this paper here, and not just this one paper. I used a couple of different pieces of paper to confirm that this was actually what's happening. And some guy actually has a video on how to bypass this thing, okay? So that's when I said, okay, I can do it. So I came down here and did it. So now we're in four-wheel drive. I'm going to plug all this stuff back in. Now you ask yourself, well, this is going to take a while. I can't plug this in. I can't see. All right. Well, if I switch it over, everything's good. I'm in four wheel. That's fine. Now the problem becomes a little more interesting, because I'm not getting electricity to the motor to actuate the motor. And where does that electricity originate from? And there's got to be somewhere to switch it. So it's got to go back to some kind of logic board or computer. So now I'm going to have to figure out what wires these are, look at them, and then get a wiring diagram, which is kind of difficult. And I'm going to trace this thing all the way back, and I think it's going to wind up at the ECU, the four-wheel drive ECU, or the main computer. I don't know which one yet, so I have to get my hands on a diagram and start chasing that. And when I figure that out, I'll let you know. But as for right now, if I hook everything up and I need to go wheeling tomorrow, I'm pretty confident that this thing will be in four-wheel drive, okay? All right, sorry for the hand-drawn chart. The computer didn't cooperate. Okay, now this is for a on-vehicle inspection, so you don't have to take anything apart, okay? So this all starts with the engine on, so that we have a vacuum source in park, and the four-wheel drive shifter on 4 high, okay? Now that that's on, and move on to the next step, we're going to check for vacuum, all right? So in the engine compartment, you check for vacuum and see which solenoid has the vacuum, all right? And remember which one it is, okay? If you don't, fix the source and try again. If that's the problem, then you go ahead and keep working on it, okay? But let's say we have vacuum. Okay, so now once you have vacuum, we're going to start the on-vehicle test, okay, with the engine on. All right, so we're going to press the four-wheel drive button and engage the four-wheel drive, okay? Now, you're going to need a buddy to do this. When you press that button, have somebody under the car, make sure the car, you know, is blocked off, safe, it's not going to run him over or anything. And listen for the actuator, the transfer case actuator motor to run, okay? So if you press the button and the motor runs and it shifts the transfer case into four-wheel drive, then you're good, okay? If it doesn't, well, the thing is the transfer case is the first thing. The transfer case motor is the first thing that needs to happen, and there's nothing else in between. So if that's the case, then we're going to go back. It could be possibly a bad ECU. Okay, we're not going to say it is, but that's a high probability you got a bad ECU, and that's what I've got. Okay, now let's say the motor did actuate. Okay, now you go to the front of the car and check the vacuum source. Did it switch from one to the other? Okay, if it did, okay. The four-wheel drive light should be on, okay? If it did not switch from one to the other, look at the transfer case sensor switch, which is on the transfer motor. Is part of it, okay? There's a sensor there. Check that, and if it's defective, replace it and try again, okay? Because if the vacuum switched, that means this switch should have picked it up. Okay, and sent the signal to the computer. But seeing what's going on here, that actually should not happen, but that's what you want to check, okay? All right, now let's say the vacuum switched from one to the other, okay? And there's okay, so the vacuum switched, that means everything here we're good up to this step. If it did switch from the other, is the four-wheel drive light on? It should be on, because if it's switched, it should be on. And if it is, go wheeling. If it's not, now we're going to go to the, it's going to be the front axle sensor switch is probably bad, okay? Because with the vacuum, if it's switched over, it should have activated the axle locking up on the front axle, and that in turn should have tripped this switch, and this switch should have told the computer, okay, everything's good, and the four-wheel drive light should be on. Now, if you go through all this and it's not working, you probably, in very high probability, I'm not going to say it absolutely is, but there's a very high probability it's a bad ECU. Okay. Right now, I did not, in my troubleshooting steps, I did not get past this part right here. So I'm going for the bad ECU. Okay. But I can manually make all this other stuff happen. And I can also trick I could trick the computer into thinking that the transfer case motor did actuate when it did not, by bypassing the sensor. So by bypassing the sensor at this point, everything else here happens. I actually get the four-wheel drive light on, the front axle's lock. So now that leads me back to the ECU, because that is where the wires directly go from the motor. Unfortunately, I may have a bad ECU. Hopefully you don't, but this is my troubleshooting guide. It may not be the best one, it may not even be the right one, but it's there for you to help you troubleshoot. So thank you for watching. I hope this helps you out. Alright, YouTube, I told you it was a long video, and it's still ongoing. Alright, I have not yet fixed my 4Runner to get it to go to four-wheel drive. I'm waiting on the ECU. Okay? But I'm hoping that this video has helped you, at least in troubleshooting, that now that you understand the steps that are required, and I put them here. I believe that I'm saying there's 7 things that need to happen for you to have true four-wheel drive. Okay? Alright. Well, while I'm waiting for my ECU to show up, I thought I'd try to eliminate one more problem, and that's the actual wiring. Okay, part of the the ECU, I'm gonna say, is functional because when I chip the sensors and everything, it actually tells the front part of the car what to do. So why is it not sending power down here? I don't know. And I don't believe there is any other junction point between the ECU and this connector. I don't believe there is. Alright, so but I'm going to use a meter to verify that that's a fact. Since I suspect the ECU is bad because I'm not getting any power to my motor at the four-wheel drive transfer case because the motor is not switching, and there should be nothing between the computer and the or the ECU, right? We call it the ECU, the four-wheel drive ECU, and the motor. So what I want to do is check the wiring that goes between the two. Okay, so I decided I needed to do that to make sure while I'm waiting for the ECU that I already ordered. So I just want to make sure to eliminate the wiring as a potential problem. Okay, so how do I do that? First, I don't even know where the wire is or if there's any connectors in between. So I was lucky enough to get this diagram of the 4Runner. Okay, so let me zoom in on this. Now it's not an easy thing to follow either. Okay, so right back here we are underneath the transmission in the back. And if you follow this line, it seems like it disappears here, but it doesn't really. It comes over to here, it comes up over the engine through this little, and there's a little plastic thing there. That thing is usually all brittle, and it's probably broken. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. Yeah, right here. So it comes around the bottom of the engine, comes up the engine, comes across the engine, goes across, and there's it goes in on the right side of the firewall. And that's how it goes into the car, okay? So from the inside, I don't see any connectors in here. There's like one big one back here, but I don't have a diagram that shows that. And I was looking for potential connectors that may be loose. Okay, so since I couldn't find any, I resorted to another a method. Okay, so then it comes back to the nice wiring diagram that I got. Here's the wiring diagram that I was looking at. It shows the terminals that I'm interested in, and that's terminals 2 and terminals 3. Okay, if 3 is positive, then 2 is negative, I'm shifting into 4-wheel drive, and if it's 3 negative and 2 positive, I'm going into 2-wheel drive. Okay, now I run into a problem in that the color of the wires that I have inside the car do not match. They never do. Okay, you can never get the exact wiring diagram. Okay, they don't match this what is it? This wiring diagram that I got for the Toyota. Okay, now this is for 2002 4Runner down here. I have a 96. So the manual says 96 through 2002, but they don't differentiate. So it's hella hard. Okay, anyway, none of these colors match what I have, but that's not a total loss. I can go down to the motor and look at the wires and see what colors I got down there. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do. I got a video on that, and I'm going to show you that video. All right. So we got that off. And the wire, that was terminals 2 and 3, is this, it looks like this dark green and a yellow with the green stripe. Alright, so we got a dark green and a yellow green with a green stripe. Let me see if that exists at the ECU. And I don't have, oh wait a minute, there's a dark green. Yep, these wires exist down there. Okay, yeah, this one. So there's one with a red, it looks like a black stripe, and then a dark green. So to know for sure what if these wires go down there, I'm gonna hook my meter up and short them out. So okay, I'm on voltage. Go there. Okay, so it's going to be this terminal here, this one, and this one is what I'm after. The secret is, how do I get this to stay? I don't want to break this connector. Okay, all right, now, so if I short, I have to find a piece of wire. the yellow, black with the, no, the yellow with the black stripe and the green together, it should get a tone here. All right, there we go. All right, so I shorted it out, and there's a tone. That means the wire's good, and the wires do. Let me get out from under the car. The wires do go from the ECU connector underneath the car, and let me see if I can show you where I got it shorted, so you could do this test if you needed to. All right, so what I did was I unplugged. Let me see. I'm not seeing if I'm getting the camera angle or not. Okay, yeah, see this? So I pulled this connector off and then stripped a piece of wire and shoved it in there. So I think you can hear the meter. All right, so there you go. All right, so I know the wiring's good. So we eliminated the wiring as a problem. See, I was wondering about this other wire. I did see it here. There's the, oh, that's an orange wire. Yeah, there's a other wire. It's a orange wire, okay, with the green, and there's a pink too. I wonder where those go. I didn't see that down there. I did see the orange. I wonder if the orange goes down there. Yellow with the orange stripe. All right, so let's use the green but that's a constant. So let's connect this one to the one on the opposite side, and then we're going to go down there and check it. It's going to be this one right here. I can't get that. All right, there we go. Okay, it's kind of tight. All right, so now I'm going to go down short green to yellow orange. I need a light. Let me take my handy dandy battery light. All right, I just shorted the green to the one with the yellow orange. So it is those two wires, because those two wires are the largest ones. That's the power supply. Now, you know what? There's also a pink here. So I'm going to test the pink wire too. So I'm going to short the green to the pink. And we'll come up there and test it. Make sure those four wires are good. That's all I'm looking for. So now I'm going green to pink. Green to pink. Pink is this one. Okay, so the four wires going down to the motor are good. Okay, and these are the big wires, so these got to be the ones carrying the power. If you think about it, it's always the big wires that are carrying the power. So you know what I'm thinking? One set is forward, either forward or reverse. Okay, so that's probably what's going on there. All right, so the wiring's good. So we've kind of eliminated that too. So what's left? The damn ECU. I got a new one on the way, but we got to wait till Friday, okay? And today's only Monday. While trying to hunt down the ECU wiring, I did find a very nice, I guess it's a training manual or something online, okay? The problem I have is my ECU connectors look nothing like the ECU connectors that they have here. They have quite a few terminals on there, and I don't have that many online, so it doesn't even match. I mean, because they have this really nice troubleshooting page for you to check all this stuff, and I can't do that because this is for a 2002 4Runner, and I got a 1996, right? So they give you, excuse me, all these values and all these steps to perform. All right, and actually, they have the four-wheel drive test that I want to do, and it tells you, right, 10 to 14 volts for about 5 seconds, all right, and then two-wheel drive, 10 to 14 volts, less than so many seconds, and that's across terminal 13 and terminal 26. Well, I only got 14 terminals on my ECU connector, so I can't use this. So it is 5 seconds for the transfer. So it's here, but this doesn't apply to my vehicle. Yet the manual says it's a 1996 to 2002, but they left out that they had changed they had updated or changed it, and I don't have that page. Okay. Anyway, I'm just going to do it old school. I went with the color of the wires, and I wrung it out, and there's a video on it. I made a video on it. Now, I've also ordered a new ECU, so we're going to go there. Now, the other thing is, with the ECU, I mean, this is really, really getting into it. I actually hunted down the relay that's on the ECU. It's made by NEC. It's an EP2 series. And when I was looking at the relays, now if you're in electronics, if you're an electronics guru, this is for you. All right, so looking at this, I was wondering why they had these kind of configurations in the relay. Normally it's just relay on, relay off, but basically what they're using is either H-bridge or a T-type, right? I believe we're using an H-bridge, and I have to look at the circuit board and the pattern on the circuit board and see how they're switching it. Basically, with this type of setup, you could switch the polarity of the output. So you got a plus on in one configuration, it'll be plus on one terminal, and you activate it and it'll switch the configuration to negative. And that's how they're controlling the transfer, let's see, with the transfer case motor. Okay, because you switch the polarity, they either go in or out of four-wheel drive, and that's what this relay was for. When I initially ran into this relay, I thought it was the ADD relay, but it's not the ADD relay. It's the relay that controls the transfer case motor. All right, man, that's a mouthful. Okay, that was a lot of information in this video. Even with all that information, I did not get my 4Runner into four-wheel drive yet. I'm waiting on the ECU. So I got down, I think, to probably step 3, as far as what I determined in the process. And I could not get past that. But I know everything else past step 3 is functional, because I can actually bypass sensors and make it work. So my biggest problem right now is power from the ECU to the transfer case actuator motor. It's not happening. I've also checked the wiring, and you saw the video on that. So I know the wiring from the ECU to the transfer case motor is good. The very last thing I'm going to do is, after I get my module and my new ECU, four-wheel drive ECU, plug it in, and if it works, I'm actually going to rebuild the four-wheel drive ECU module that I have on this vehicle now. And I think it's the relay. And this is the spec sheet on the relay, and I think I could get this relay on eBay. All right, so the videos, if you watched it this far, man, you really got patience. But anyway, I am still going to continue chasing this problem, and the video is not complete until I have solved the problem. All right, so thank you for watching, and I hope this helps you troubleshoot your ADD system. It is indeed a very complex system, but it works. It's kind of interesting how it works, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong. But I really think the first thing that has to happen is the problem I'm having. One, you need to get power to the motor, and that initiates everything. So everything has to happen one after the other. Step 5 cannot happen before step 2. It just has to be in order. And right now, I'm chasing that order, and this video gives you that order. So once you have that order, you can start diagnosing the problem of your four-wheel drive. And if you run into a problem, that's probably where it's going to be. All right, my new ECU has arrived. Let me take off the old one. Make sure that they look the same. All right. Here's the new ECU. The pins match. That one was this is the original one, was a 6J17. This is a 6 Alpha. So this one's a little bit earlier, actually. All right, moment of truth. Let's take this out of four wheel. Turn the key. 4-wheel drive. I'm going to drive it and see if it comes out. Just went off because I moved the car. Right, so the light went off. Let me get the camera. Let me get the camera. I can't reach it. Okay, here's the camera. All right, so let me see if I could take the. I'll just hold it like this. Okay, so. What I did was the car was in 4-wheel drive, and how would you say? I turned it off. I released the button, so the button popped out. So then the light stayed on, but then when I rolled the vehicle, it came out of 4-wheel drive, and that was expected. It should have done that. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the button on the 4-wheel drive. The light didn't come on yet, but if I shift it into drive, the light came on. See that? Great. So it is, the problem was the ECU. Oh my God. I have encountered a very interesting problem right now. I'm parked on a slight garage type incline, you know, and the car will go into 4-wheel drive, but it will not disengage. Now, I did do a timing change, and I know I pulled the ATF lines, and I lost some transmission fluid. I'm wondering if a low fluid situation would cause this. All right, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to engage the 4-wheel drive. All right, so I got it engaged. The light did not yet come on. I'm going to put it into drive, and the light came on. Okay. What's interesting is if I disengage the 4-wheel drive, put it into park, right, the light won't go off, and if I drive it, if we let it roll forward, the light won't go off. And if I roll it backwards, the light won't go off. I don't know what's going on. Oh, I got the brake off, sorry. Okay, I took the brakes off. Now I'm going to try and drive this thing backwards. This is really weird. I don't want to hit my house. Okay, so the other funny thing is, if I stop the car, okay, so let's just put it in there, set the brake, and we got the button off, right, it's in, it's off, okay. Now we turn the car off. All right, take the key out, put the key back in, notice the light didn't come on, now we're out. So I'm not exactly sure what the hell's happening there. It's weird, but you know, it works. So the only thing I know is I lost a little ATF fluid, so I'm going to try that. I know it's switching into 4-wheel now because the car just drives totally different when I engage the 4-wheel drive. So basically the ECU was the problem on this vehicle. So I'm going to put the floorboard covers and everything back on, and that'll be the end of this video. But well, I'm going to not totally the end. I want to figure out why I can't get it to come out of 4-wheel drive on the fly without turning off the car and starting it back up. Kind of interesting. I'm not sure what's going on with that. We're doing an actual road test on a dirt road. You can see it's not in 4, and I'm going to put it in 4. Okay, I just heard it click over. I don't know if you can see the light. The light just came on. We're going to drive down this road a little. All right. All right, now I'm going to disengage the 4-wheel drive. Okay, the light did not go off. I'm going to drive forward, and the light didn't go off, right? Okay, now I'm going to switch it into reverse. That usually does it. And I'm going to back up a little. You heard that bang? That's what it used to do. Okay, so the light went off. So I'm satisfied because the vehicle is performing the way it should before the other ECU went bad. Okay, so the ECU was the problem with my four-wheel drive. I'm all set. So that actually is the real conclusion of the video of how I solved the problem. Now there's one other thing I need to mention. I did add transmission fluid to my automatic transmission because it was like a quart low. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Boy, this is one long video. I did finally get to the end, and the problem did in fact turn out to be this ECU. So I did not go into troubleshooting anything past what I needed to do to get my 4Runner running. So I apologize for that, but I've got it fixed. I'm not going to dig into it too much more. Maybe sometime in the future, I'm going to rebuild this ECU, and I suspect the relay probably went bad. I already ordered it, so we'll see. Anyway, that'll be another video though. This one's already too long. Alright, so thank you all for watching, and remember, this is for educational use only. Do not try this. Do not try this. Alright, it's just information to give you ideas where to go and where to start and how to look for problems within your four-wheel drive. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.